Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into the events of September 9th, 2025, and the pretty intense fallout that followed, and we're going to break it all down based on the reporting from the Qatar Tribune.
Okay, let's kick things off with this quote. Why? Because it really gets to the core of this whole thing. You see, the way the Qatar Tribune tells it, this wasn't just any military strike, it was an assault on the very idea of diplomacy itself. So, to really get why that quote is so powerful, we need to rewind a bit and look at what exactly happened. What was the event that set off this whole international crisis?
And this timeline, it really puts things into perspective. You have the airstrike hitting Doha on September 9th, and then boom, just 6 days later, an emergency summit is already happening. That kind of speed, well, it tells you just how seriously everyone in the region took this.
So the main event, the thing that was all over the front page, was this airstrike. And the paper makes a really important point. This wasn't some disputed territory. We're talking about an attack on the capital city of a sovereign country.
Now, let's get into the details of the attack itself. The report says the targets were residences of Hamas political bureau members. But, and this is a big but, the location was a residential compound. And what's more, the source points out that this same compound also had schools and diplomatic missions in it. That detail right there, it's absolutely crucial for understanding the huge international reaction that came next.
All right, so how did Qatar react to all this? Well, as you can probably imagine, the response from its leadership was immediate, and it was strong.
And when I say strong, I mean the language they used was incredibly powerful. The Prime Minister is quoted as calling it, and I'm quoting here, state terrorism. He didn't just call it an attack. He framed it as a deliberate policy coming from the Israeli government.
And then the argument shifts a little, right? It pivots to international law. The Prime Minister really drives home Qatar's status as a sovereign member of the United Nations. So the message is, this wasn't just an attack on us. It was an attack on the whole international system.
This really paints a picture of a completely unified front. You have the Emir's statement, which is reported to back up the Prime Minister's words perfectly. He affirms that Qatar is going to defend its sovereignty using every tool guaranteed by international law. It's just a crystal clear message of resolve.
But this response wasn't just happening inside Qatar. Not at all. The Qatar Tribune reports a huge wave of international support rolling in for Qatar right after the attack.
And you can see just how broad that diplomatic reaction was. The support wasn't just from the Arab and Islamic world, which you might expect. No, we're talking condemnations and solidarity coming from all over, from countries in Europe, from Africa, a really wide range. And it wasn't just general statements either. You see other world leaders, like the president of Cyprus, quoted using almost the exact same language. And the focus keeps coming back to the same two things, a violation of international law and a serious threat to the whole region's stability. Okay, but to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to look at the specific context. What was going on when this attack happened? And this, right here, is what brings us all the way back to that quote we started with. So here's the key piece of the puzzle. According to the source, Qatar's official role in all of this was as a third-party mediator. You know, they were the ones actively in the middle of things, trying to de-escalate the conflict in Gaza.
And this slide lays out the central argument from the source perfectly. Look, on one side, you have Qatar hosting official peace talks for a ceasefire. And on the other side, an airstrike hits the residential compound of the very team they're negotiating with. The Prime Minister is even quoted as saying this happened while the talks were live and that the Israeli side knew about it. It's a pretty stark contrast.
So why would this happen? Well, this quote from the Qatari Prime Minister suggests a reason. He points the finger at what he calls the silence or inability of the international community to hold Israel accountable. The idea here is that this perceived lack of consequences is exactly what emboldens these kinds of escalations. So what happened next? What was the immediate fallout from the attack? Well, a huge diplomatic meeting was pulled together in Doha, and it happened incredibly fast.
And the wording they used is really telling. This wasn't just some regular meeting. It was called an Emergency Arab-Islamic Summit. That one word, emergency, tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the Arab and Islamic world was taking this.
And the goals for this summit? They were pretty straightforward, according to the leaders and analysts in the source. It was all about showing a unified front, putting a stop to the aggression, and pushing the international community to step up and take responsibility. Basically, they wanted to create a collective response to what they saw as a really dangerous precedent being set.
And all of this really leads us to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? When the mediators themselves become the targets, what does that mean for the future of diplomacy? Because according to the reports we've looked at, this wasn't just seen as an attack on a building. It was seen as an attack on the entire process of negotiation. And that, well, that leaves a huge hanging question about how you can even have peace talks if the people trying to broker the peace aren't safe.